All right, welcome to the GearScout Podcast, where we talk tactical and things that go bang. My name's Christian Lowe, and with me today is the plinktastic Chris Cleary. How's it going, Chris?
Good, brother. I gotta give you credit for all those different intros.
I gotta
well
keep
done.
trying. We've got a solid podcast for you this week. We're recording this episode after the Thanksgiving holiday and Black Friday, but before Cyber Monday. So maybe we'll talk a little tactical shopping. But don't worry, we'll get into the thick of it and ponder whether modular suppressors are worth it. We'll talk a little bit about scout rifles. What? Cleaning your guns, I'll be darned.
Boo.
And if bears are scarier than zombies. Really. Seriously. All right, so let's get to it, Chris. How are things going with you? What's new in your life?
Good. To talk turkey, huh? No pun intended, or maybe pun intended. It is post the holidays. Everybody's around, kids around, put the lights up, got the Christmas tree. Oldest daughter heading back to college tomorrow, but she's been bugging me for forever to take her to the range. So probably as soon as we're done with this podcast, I'm going to be packing up the range bag and taking her to a little indoor range we have not too far from the house. Do a little 9 mil work, let her play with a bunch of different handguns and see if she can put some holes in paper.
I wonder if those handguns begin with the letter G.
Well, come on.
Are you going to let her handle Glocks in front of you there? I mean, I don't know.
Well, she is a college student. I don't know. I can't always be there. So, yeah.
Well, that sounds like fun. Too bad you can't go outside. It's a pretty rainy, gross day today.
Rainy day, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. I had a little bit of range fun myself. We had some friends come up from out of town with 2 daughters and young daughters, so middle school, 6th grade, 5th grade, and the dad texted me a couple days before they came up and said, hey, any chance we can go to the range and show the girls how to shoot? They've never shot before. And so I, of course, leapt at the chance to do that. And of course, I tried to tempt the dad into our friend hey, you want me to bring some ballistic goodness for us to play around with? And he wasn't as interested in that, not a big gun guy, but did think that it was important for his daughters to learn, the very basics of safety and shooting and stuff. So I said, okay, fair enough. I have this great little gun that I bought a few years ago called the Savage Rascal. And it's a little single shot bolt action 22 rifle that's sized for kids, right? So it's got a very short length of pull, and these kids are a little too big for it, but it's like super non-intimidating. And so went to my outdoor range. It was a gorgeous day on the Friday after Thanksgiving, and shot some paper at 25 yards. It's just got a little peep sight on it, and everyone had a great time. They really enjoyed it and were safe about it, and shot in the black ring, no problem. I always worry that, are you really on the target? Are you really looking at that target and you're not shooting the berm or above the berm, God forbid, and that kind of thing.
Yep.
So it was pretty fun, and I think the girls saved their targets. I also took my 6.5 Grendel out there because I put a new optic on it, and I just wanted to make sure I was zeroed at 50. And one of the girls wanted to shoot that, which is a great light recoiling rifle, and I had a suppressor on the end of it, so it was even better. And she shot the target at 50 yards, got it in the black, and saved that target and marked out her shot. She was pretty proud of it. So
you're making me want to break out the 1022 when I go to this indoor range now, because I haven't fired that gun in a while.
That's the greatest beginner 22 rifle in the history of the world.
Oh, I love shooting it. It's like shooting a laser beam.
Yeah.
It's no recoil. I got these 25 round magazines, so if you just want to go and plink plink plink, it's that thing's awesome. And it's funny, we could talk about this. I didn't plan on talking about this, but I was doing a lot of research. This is way back when it talked about the lethality of a 22 caliber round or the punch power. I'm surprised how much punch a 22 round long rifle round has at distance.
Yeah. No, I had a friend whose stepdad, illegally, mind you, but on his own
Yep.
land, used to kill deer with a 22.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, no problem. I mean, like we were sort of discussing in the green room earlier. In Virginia, at least growing up, I used to hunt deer with buckshot, and buckshot is 9.22 caliber double-aught buck is basically 9.22 caliber rifle-sized pellets in a 12-gauge shotgun shell, and so. It's possible that you could hit the deer with one of those pellets and kill it, and so you're
Huh.
essentially, hunting deer with a 22 with that.
That's impressive. But what's the velocity coming out of a I guess it's got to be at least 1,000 feet a second or something like that, right?
Whatever dead deer per
Imagine.
second it takes. I don't know. But yeah, that 22, that 1022 is, I mean, it is the best damn rifle, for beginners and for lots of things. And I would ditch the 25 rounder and just use the little 10 rounder that comes with it, because that way you're not like bracing, you're not worried about the magazine length on the table and all that kind of stuff.
Well, but then, what's cooler than a 25 round magazine? Because, as
Yeah.
we know on this program, all things lead to zombies.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And, and I got the 1022 takedown. So the one that,
Oh, cool.
breaks down in half,
Yeah.
which is and it comes with a nice little bag,
Yeah.
a great little kit. So that bag with 3 25 round magazines loaded in it, weighs almost nothing. I mean, it's a great, now, if I wasn't going to get arrested in the state of Maryland, it would be the great thing to just like leave in the back of your truck.
Yeah.
Of course, I can't do that because I live in Maryland. But it's the perfect little bug out bag. I mean, it's in there. You grab it. It's light. And a guy who was doing a review on it really showed it, which was funny because I also play paintball. He said what was perfect is he filled a paintball tube up with just 22 caliber rounds, and you could put like 300 or 400 rounds in this paintball tube, and it fit perfectly in this carrying case.
Oh, yeah.
So if you talked about a little survival rifle, a little thing like let's just say you're a small plane pilot, right?
Yeah.
And for whatever, this is the perfect little thing to throw, whether it be in your, if you live in the woods or whatever, light, portable, you could put a ton of rounds in there.
Yeah.
And, grab it when you needed it. So
Yeah.
it's a cool little setup.
And you can drop
Really
a deer with a 22. It's not legal, but if in a survival mode, you'd have to. Do you
Sure.
Do you have a scope on yours?
I don't. I'm thinking about putting one on it.
Yeah.
I like the kids just learning to shoot through the iron sights first.
Yeah.
But no, I'll probably put something on it eventually.
Yeah, I grew up, learning to hunting squirrels with a scope 1022, and that thing was murder.
Well, again, in a survival situation, any kind of small game, a badger, a squirrel, a raccoon,
A badger? Where are you fucking
anything
hunting,
that was
man?
small that you would want to eat at one point. Not that I've never had a badger, so I don't know what I'm talking about. People on this show will beat me up because I don't know what I'm talking about. But that's right in the title of the show.
We did a survey. We did a survey on the GearScout weekly newsletter, which all you listeners should subscribe to. And more than half, so 55% of those who took the survey don't hunt. So you're
Okay.
you're by far not the minority here. You're with the majority of GearScout podcast listeners. Speaking of takedown and modularity, one of the pieces of news this week is I wanted to discuss was on multi-caliber suppressors. SilencerCo made a big splash recently with their 36M suppressor. SilencerCo is a great company. They've gone through some downturns a little bit recently, but a solid technology-based, solid engineering, great brand, and good support behind their products and that sort of thing. But they came out with the Omega 36M. It's a modular suppressor, which they say goes from 9mm. It will work on a handgun all the way up to 338 Lapua. This brings up sort of an interesting point about suppressors that I wanted to kind of explore with you, Chris, and that is, the usefulness, the economy, the long-term viability and that sort of thing of modular cans that are like sort of a one and done kind of deal. You know, I don't know. I'd like to hear your take. I know you're not super experienced with cans, but someone who might be but you are someone who might be interested in getting their first can suppressor. It seems like, you know, this is something that might be attractive to someone like you.
I have a lot to say on this subject because
right.
every time we start talking cans, I kick myself because I always complain about the wait time to get one. But had I done this at any point in the past when I said I would be having one right now. Maybe this is the thing that motivates me to finally plump some money down and get one. I would definitely want to get a multi-caliber one because, you know, of course you'd want to throw it on different things. And if I can put it on my 308 rifles and then run it on 5.56 and, you know, set it up on a pistol, of course. You know, it was funny when we were doing, you know, again, living in Maryland, which is not the most gun-friendly state. I was doing some research about cans back in the past, and I think you and I have talked about this once before. And you know, it was funny it was the Department of Land Management or something. The reason suppressors became illegal back in the day had nothing to do with crime. It had to do with poaching livestock during the Great Depression. And I think that to me is interesting. And now that it's got this these horrible stigma that they're for bad guys. You see them in the movies, and we've all shot guns with cans. They're not quiet. You can get subsonic ammunition, a 10-22 with a subsonic round. Okay, that is quiet. But a 5.56, they're not quiet. I mean, and it's funny if you look at rules for cans in Europe. They're almost required because it's considered a safety device,
right? Because
it lowers the noise produced at the muzzle, which protects hearing,
right?
And it's funny, and talk about in Europe where guns are way more restricted than us. Suppressors over there are considered a safety item. Over here, they're associated with, you know, crimes, which I don't know if anybody's even been shot with a suppressor in a crime ever.
Yeah, there was that recent shooting down in like the Virginia Beach area, right? And I think that guy used a suppressor. I don't remember if it was a suppressor on a rifle or on a handgun. So Virginia's going after suppressors. It's extremely rare, but you know, is it correlation causation? Is it rare because it's relatively difficult to get a suppressor? You know, that could be one reason why. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the decibel level of an AR-15 with most suppressors is about 130 decibels, and that's about as much as a jackhammer. So yeah, it's not like you're like, you know.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, to say I'm looking at the website right now. You know, 128.9 decibels and up.
Yeah.
You know, that's not quiet.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll
but,
still.
But what are your? I mean, I can understand from a consumer standpoint why you'd want like sort of a one and done can. Mm-hmm. You know, it makes a lot of sense economically. You're spending a $200 tax stamp. If you can just get one that you can, you know, screw on to the threaded barrel of your 9mm, and as long as it has a booster on it, you can cycle that 9mm, and then also, you know, take an adapter and put it on your, you know, 6.5 Creedmoor. You know, you'd be in good shape. You know, though there are critics on this, and one of whom sneers at multi-caliber and modular suppressors. And there's a difference between multi-caliber and modular. You know, I'm not a total expert on this, but I know enough, I think I'm right, to say you can get a 30 caliber suppressor, and you can use that on a firearm from anything below 30 caliber to 30 caliber, right? So you can screw it on the end of your AR-15, which is a 223 5.56, and use that as a suppressor. It's not as good. It doesn't suppress as much as if you were screwing it on to the end of your 308, but it still will work. You don't want to do it with a 22 because you worry about a little bit of bullet variation coming out of the muzzle there and a baffle strike, so an internal strike inside, the bullet hitting a piece of the internal mechanism of the, not mechanism, but the internals of the can.
Yep.
But, from a, like a center fire, so I guess maybe a 17 HMR all the way up, you can pretty reliably use that can. So that's you can use that as a multi-caliber can. What these are and there are other models like this, suppressors that are rigged for shooting a pistol, a semi-automatic pistol, which typically requires some kind of a spring mechanism in it. It's called a booster, to give it enough recoil action to cycle the blowback recoil system, right, on a handgun. And they're also modular in that they are built in sections, so you can shorten them or lengthen them, and as you shorten them, they suppress less. As you lengthen them, they suppress more, because there's more space for the gas to expand, right? So one of the biggest critics of this is, and I listen, it's a phenomenal podcast. Anyone out there who does not know about it should definitely subscribe to it. It's the Q and Ass podcast with Kevin Brittingham. He's very, very smart on this stuff, obviously. He's the owner of Q. He was the owner of AAC, which developed the 300 Blackout, the Honey Badger, and sold a lot of suppressors to the Naval Special Warfare community. Worked at Remington for a short period of time before he pissed them off, and then worked at Sig and started their suppressor business. Anyway, he knows this really well. He's the biggest critic. He says modular doesn't work. You should get a can for the caliber that you're shooting. That is the only way to really suppress it and really make it work. Buy a 9mm can for your 9mm, a 5.56 can for your 5.56, a 308 can for your 308. 6.5 can for your 6.5 Creedmoor, right? So because the bore diameter inside that suppressor is specifically tuned for that bullet and will trap, the gas / noise coming out of the muzzle the best and the most optimally. It's hard to argue that,
Well, so yeah, but that's where so define arguing it, right? I mean, we're going to go to, who are we talking to right now? We're talking to a bunch of guys that, like us, just like going out and putting holes in paper and goofing with things. What are really the applications of a suppressor? They don't work like you see them in the movies. Right. We're not doing room clearing operations. You and I are not hunting terrorists. So really, it's just about suppressing it enough to where it's comfortable to shoot with, particularly with the bigger calibers. Like, I'd like to put one on my Ruger precision rifle, just because it's more comfortable to shoot at the range, and I'm not pissing guys left and right off because I have a crazy muzzle brake on mine.
Right.
And I know that when I go to the range and it's crowded and I'm on a table right next to some other guy with a big bored rifle, and he's got a big muzzle brake, it scares the shit out of me every time he pulls the trigger when you're, when you're on target and you're not, so I get it. Is it optimal? Look, am I out there with some sort of, a decibel? What the hell did you call a device that records noise sound?
Yeah, like a decibel meter. Yeah.
Like a decibel meter. No, but I get it. Look, I totally get it. Yeah. You'd want the exact suppressor for the exact round for optimum performance. But, I'm not into it for optimum performance. I'm in it because I'm a guy that likes gear, and I've wanted a suppressor. And if I can get something to go on a bunch of different guns, that's what I'll do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. And I tend to come down on your side of the equation, although, I got a great suppressor that I played around with from a really neat company, Rebel Silencers. They have this great suppressor called the Defender 9. It's a modular silencer. It has, I think 4 or 5 different sections. It's just such a great value. It's like, a little less than $300, and it comes with a booster for 9mm, an adapter for 1/2 by 28 adapter, and then whatever the other one is for 308. So you can put this thing on anything. The only thing that it's not rated for full auto fire, but that's totally fine. I don't have any select fire
Yeah, but you said the most
firearms.
important thing with that. It
Say
was
again?
only $300. In the beginning, you started this with the
Yep.
most important thing to the average consumer.
Yeah.
Look, if I could get a suppressor for $300, yeah, maybe I would buy 3 of them for different calibers. But a good suppressor is going to run you $1,000.
Okay,
Uh,
but, so to finish my story, I used it on my little range toy, my CZ Scorpion Evo Pistol, and I tried to run that thing without any headphones on, and I'm sorry, it was not quiet enough to not have that, crack, stinging crack kind of for your ear. So it may have suppressed some, and that's shooting 9 mil out of a, what is it, like a 7-inch or 7.5-inch barrel or something like that, right? And it was the
Yep.
full extent of the every section on the suppressor was screwed on, and it wasn't really doing that great a job suppressing it. Now it was more than nothing, but it was not like I would expect. Break. I have a 5.56 suppressor for my 5.56 rifle that's a direct thread right on there, 5.56, and that thing is quiet as shit. So
Sure.
there is something to be said for it. If you want to have hearing safe suppressors on your firearms, I mean, Kevin's got a point, right? So, and so is that money, and a SilencerCo multi-caliber modular can is not going to be only $300. I mean, I don't know what
Hey,
the
that's what I'm
price.
saying.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
that's what I'm
but that's
saying.
the thing. So it's going to be probably $1,000. I don't know. I don't know the price on here. I should check. I should do my research before I do these things here. But it's going to be expensive. So why not buy 2 cheap cans? Of course, you're adding $200 in
Yeah.
taxes to that. That are optimized for your firearm and will keep that hearing safe. It's $1,100 for that thing. Now you can make the argument, well, I spent $1,100 and I'm not buying 3 cans, I'm buying 1. But you're buying 1, as Kevin says, and I don't disagree with him. Just from my
Yeah.
in the field testing, you're buying 1 can that doesn't really suppress as well as you would want, really. I mean, the object is to be able to
Yeah.
shoot this thing without hearing protection on, right? So,
No, absolutely right. Can't argue any of that.
yeah. So,
I still
but
don't
I
have.
but I
I
st-
still
but I
want
still am going to go for multi-caliber modular cans.
one because I want one, and that might solve
I
scrap
love my
the itch.
Rebel Defender 9. That thing is it's a great value and it's really fun. So,
Yep.
all right, well, off of that segment, let's go into our Under the Rug segment. I want to start with you. I think that this is a really intriguing subject matter that you have presented me and the rest of the listeners today, because I'll admit, I've looked at these and kind of, been intrigued, and I want to know where your head is with this. Talk to
All right.
us about this
So,
scout rifle program that you're looking at.
and we might have to combine 2 segments because one really kind of rolls off into the other.
That's okay. We can do
let
that.
let me flow with this, right? So, adding to my gun safe, I came across this concept of a scout rifle. I think it was on Ruger's website. I've seen him at gun shows, and the talk track is it's the one rifle to have if you only could have one rifle, kind of thing, right? It kind of does everything okay. I got the designer, the lieutenant colonel who, back in the day, who designed this Ford optic, relatively light, quick to shoulder, 308 caliber. So it's the bullet that kind of does everything okay. And again, it was this idea of I have a buddy of mine that hunts with it.
It's Colonel Cooper, Jeff Cooper,
Yeah,
right?
thank you. Cooper, correct.
He's the one who did the 4 rules of firearm safety.
Correct, right? So it's his design. It does everything well. And it was the idea of it. Look, it seemed like it's a light rifle. It's a good backpacking rifle. It would be a good, again, a good, like what they call like a ranch gun, right? Something you'd had in the back of your truck, or something you could just kind of pack around to do anything with. So so I'm sold on the idea of a scout rifle. And of course, then you start looking into scout rifles. I think Ruger kind of has maybe the pinnacle of what a scout rifle should be, although it's expensive. Savage has got a nice one. Mossberg has got a nice one. So you can get them anywhere from like 600 to 1,100 bucks. They all basically do the same thing. So for me to throw one in the safe, as much as I'd like the Ruger, I'll probably go with a Savage or a Mossberg just because they're a little less expensive. And again, they do all the same things. But here's the real debate that I keep struggling with. And again, it's going to go to our typical training for zombies segment, which is going to bring me a different thing. So you were junking about afraid of bears. Well, over the weekend, I watched The Revenant again, to my own better judgment, or of not watching it. And of course, you come across the bear scene, which is the equivalent of a zombie apocalypse scene.
That movie is no fucking joke, dude.
So that bear scene, just the idea of being in the woods and having a rifle that's bolt action if you had to do something quickly. So then this gets into this debate of, well, if you're going to carry around something like that, would you still be looking for something semi-auto, which then you start looking at like a Mini 14, and you can get the Mini 30, right, which is the 300 blackout, or then you start going into that, like the carbine length M1A rifle.
Right.
So for those guys, and I would love to hear people's opinions on this. The scout rifle is definitely cool, and if with practice you can run that thing pretty quickly, right? It's designed to be run quickly, so it's almost like a combat rifle.
Right.
But it's not as quick as simply pulling the trigger multiple times and having several rounds leave the barrel, like where you get into your Mini 14 or your Mini 30, or again your M1A, carbine kind of setup.
Yeah.
So where are your thoughts? Again, look at zombie apocalypse. Bears, I guess, could turn into zombies. The idea of being mauled by a bear horrifies me. Of course, that says I don't hunt and I'm not in the woods very often. So this is like me being afraid of sharks. I don't know. Thoughts?
Yeah, I'm super intrigued by the scout rifle. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I think a 25 round magazine fed, kind of, or 20 round. I don't know what this one is. I'm looking at the
10 round
one.
They typically come with 10 rounds, but you can get 20 round magazines easy for them.
I mean, you boil down to the argument between semi-auto handguns and revolvers, right? Like, which one's more reliable, or pump action shotguns and semi-auto shotguns and blah, 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 right? Like, yeah, I mean, I can see how a bolt gun in this configuration, you've dropped it in a swamp because you're getting chased by a bear, and you pick it up and you're pretty darn sure that bolt's gonna cycle, with your hand crank and all that kind of shit. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's something kind of elegant and simple about, a magazine-fed bolt gun like the Scout rifle. And Colonel Jeff Cooper, total badass for, fundamental rules of firearm safety. It's, it's withstood the test of time, and his thought process around firearms and development and marksmanship and training and all that kind of stuff are, really hard to argue. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a neat thing to add to the safe. I mean, if you were gonna kind of go outside the box a little bit on things, that is a direction to go. Now, the deal is, I mean, I'm looking at the Ruger stuff. That's $1,100, $1,200 gun, MSRP, totally cool. Jeff Cooper thought that 308 was the best. I do not think 308's the best. I don't like 308. You know that. And so I would want, if I was going to have something, I'd want something in a different caliber. Although 308's pretty ubiquitous, right? Like, it's everywhere, and that's sort of part of the philosophy behind this thing. I guess if I were in the scenario that you're talking about, I think I would be totally okay with a 30-round AR-15, maybe in 300 blackout or something like that. But
now let's go into the other kind of practicality side of it. Again, living in the state of Maryland, not horribly far from New York, and look, we're not to get into politics of gun bans, all those other things. But the other thing that I like about the Scout rifle or the or the Mini 30 again, it meets all those
It's
things
not a
that says,
scary
look,
rifle.
it's not a scary rifle, right?
Yeah.
It's even that's why I start leaning to the semi-automatic, where you start going to the Mini 14, right?
Right.
It's legal. It's not a pistol grip. You
Yeah.
can get a small magazine for it. It doesn't have all those things that make it a scary rifle, yet functionally it's every bit as capable as an AR platform. And when you start looking at the Mini 30, again, you get it in a 300 blackout. The Ruger Scout rifle, you can get it in a 308, so you can get a bigger punch on it, and actually you can get that Ruger Scout rifle in 5.56.
Yeah. I saw that, but I would challenge you that I mean, if you're going to go with something like a Scout rifle, you don't want to go with a 5.56. I mean, you want something with a little more punch than that. So.
Yeah, I looked at it as initially being my first, what I would consider, hunting rifle.
Yeah.
Like I have a buddy of mine that hunts with it all the time. It's light, it's 308, it does a lot of things well. And that's what I had my eye on it.
Yeah, so what you just brought up, which I think is kind of interesting, and I actually have looked at, was the Ares Defense AR-15. It is what is it? The SCR. That thing is. It basically is an AR-15 with a like a rifle stock, and so it basically is a non-ban AR-15. It has the same front end, but it just has a different bolt and carrier that kind of, instead of a buffer tube and spring, a buffer and spring and tube, it has this sort of downward plunging buffer, not dissimilar from, I think I'm right on this, not dissimilar from like the Browning Auto 5, the shotgun way that action goes.
Yeah.
And I've been super intrigued by that. That is a non-ban, non-scary AR-15 option. I don't know anyone that's ever used one for very much. I don't know. I've never shot one, but for hedging against scary gun bans, I don't know that might not be something that I would probably consider. I like that Scout rifle. I think it's totally cool. I'm not big on pump action shotguns. I'm not big on revolvers, and I'm not big on like trying to be a fast shot with a bolt gun. So that's the non-traditionalist in me.
Well, and then it goes back. I'll just end it with now picture big bear running at you trying to cycle a bolt gun, right?
Yeah, right. So I'm going to close my eyes and pull the trigger and run.
Exactly.
But I on the flip side, I was looking at my under the rug stuff that I want to talk about is a little bit more bleeding edge. I have two things real quick. First is I did end up getting, as many of you know, I have a Frankensig. I have an X VTAC grip module with a Sig Sauer RX grip module with a and trigger with a what is it, the RX Compact on the top. So I really like that. I loved my Glock, but the Glock was crushing me with slide bite, so I went with something with a little bit more of a tang on it, and to protect my hand. And I really enjoy shooting that RX. I like that length. I'm not big in full length handguns. I know I'd probably shoot better if I were, but I'm not. But I ended up getting the XFIVE Legion grip module, and while it's too long, it's for a full size, it's too long. I was told by a friend of mine at Sig, well, just chop the thing off. So I ended up sawing off 2 Picatinny sections in order for it to fit my RX Compact, and it fits just fine. And I went to the range and it cycles just fine. So I'm gonna probably play around with that at an winter indoor match just to make sure that everything functions properly on it. But I'm excited about it. This is the grip that has tungsten sort of bits of tungsten in the polymer to make the grip itself heavier. It also comes with a magnesium weight in the mag well, and so actually you guys should definitely go over to the GearScout YouTube channel because we just posted a factoid video on this. I found that it is 3 ounces, only 3 ounces lighter than a Shadow 2. A CZ Shadow 2, which is what a lot of people use in USPSA and IDPA competitions. That's a metal framed handgun. So there's something to be said for that. Now I'm shaving off a couple more ounces because I'm on my gun. I'm sorry. The XFIVE Legion itself is only 3 ounces lighter than a steel framed Shadow 2. My setup will be significantly lighter because I don't have a heavy barrel. I don't have the full length slide on my RX Compact. But anyway, it's a pretty good race ready gun right out of the box. And if you want the flexibility of a polymer frame, it's a pretty good deal. So I'm excited to play around with that. But this is the Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend, and Chris, I've had a real hard time staying off of the different Brownells and Palmetto and Midway and even bulk ammo. After going to the range and playing around with my 6.5 Creedmoor again and swapping out the optic on it and getting on paper, and one of the things that I'm really kind of, I don't know, Chris, it's not inexpensive, and so it will have to hidden under the rug and budget it in because it's not one of those ones that I can kind of slip through. I feel like I need a new trigger for this thing. I'm running a stock bullshit, trigger that I have on the lower that's just a stock trigger and it sucks. And when you're talking about a 6.5 Grendel, that's a precision round. And I'm noticing, variations of shot placement at 100 yards with that thing. And I'm noticing, trigger issues. I would like a nice, smooth, what do you call it? A double action trigger or two-stage trigger, two-stage trigger. And I'm sort of looking around at options right now, but it's hard to get something worth a damn, under $200. So.
Yeah, I've had good luck with the triggers, in both of my long guns, my Ruger Precision, and I have a Mossberg Model 10. They both have nice triggers in it, but again, I'm not going to say that I'm good enough shot where I'm noticing, there's many, many things I need to work on, I think personally, before a trigger is going to do me any good, right? The fundamentals, it was, I used to ride bikes competitively, and, everybody's looking at shaving off a couple ounces off a derailleur. And I'm like, look, I got 15 pounds to lose. I'm not worried about shaving 2 ounces off a component on a bicycle when I know I'm carrying extra body weight. And I think that's the way I look at some of my shooting. I think a better trigger could help, but I've got some serious fundamentals to work on first and foremost.
I would say the same thing, Chris. I'm not saying I'm some kind of expert at this, but I am noticing that I'm working too hard to pull that trigger back. And I know that I'm throwing that shot one side or the other because I'm working too hard to pull that trigger back.
And it doesn't have, I know both the rifles that I have trigger. I can modify the trigger and get a light.
Remember this 6.5 Grendel, it's just an upper. So I just put it on a stock AR-15 lower. In fact, another issue is I think I have a mil spec shitty A2, not an A2 stock, an M4 style stock on a non-mil spec buffer tube. So it's like a little bit of movement on that thing.
Well,
and blah, blah, blah. Now I can pad that out. Like I've been padding it all out. But that trigger, when I'm trying to pull it back, it's not, I know it. I can feel that it is just bullshit.
All right, here's what I'm gonna agree with you, because I was getting confused for a second. So on the AR platforms, when you and I were at the range the other day and you were letting me shoot your MCX, after I brought out my Daniel Defense with that Timney trigger on it, huge difference compared to shooting the trigger on that gun, which I couldn't even. I was like, wait a minute, why is it not going bang yet?
Yeah.
I remember pulling back on it. It had such a long pull compared to the Timney, which was just, you just touched it. And it was like,
So that MCX has a two-stage trigger, right? So there's a little bit of take up and then a wall, right? Whereas your Daniel Defense is much more of a competition trigger.
No, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to take back what I said. I was thinking more on the, again, for shooting longer range.
Yeah.
On my 308s, those triggers are, again, two-stage triggers, but take up and a nice break. Yeah.
There's no reason for this thing to be kind of throwing to the left and right other than, it's just that I'm shifting the barrel when I'm pulling that trigger. So I don't know. I'm it's not yet, we're recording this on a Sunday. It's not yet Cyber Monday. We'll see. We'll see what deals we got going on. Now, you were saying earlier, fuck zombies. It's bears that you're afraid of.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Well, this we've already kind of covered this a little bit. This was me watching The Revenant, and saying, "Wow, that bear really fucked up Leonardo DiCaprio. Something fierce."
Yeah.
And again, being in the woods, the likelihood of running across a bear is a little more realistic than. It's funny. I watched two scary animal movies this weekend. I watched The Revenant, and then I watched The Gray. Have you seen The Gray?
No.
Where they're all good. Liam Neeson. He's like a security guy. He runs security for oil workers in Alaska. Like his job is to shoot wolves,
right?
To kind of keep watch. And they're in an airplane and they crash and his rifle gets all broken and they're in Alaska running and this pack of wolves is chasing them down the whole time. So that was another one, right? Being run down by wolves somewhere was another sort of scary thing.
I think I disagree with you fundamentally. I think it is far more likely to be attacked by a zombie than it is to be attacked by a bear. I mean, I see zombies all the time when I'm out and about. I do not see grizzly bears out and about all the time.
You're right. Look, I'm just saying, if Jaws was what made us all afraid to go swimming in the water, the Revenant has now made me afraid to go walking around in the woods without some sort of firearm.
Yet your daughter, you're sending your daughter on Knowles trips.
Yeah, and did I tell you the story? The year before she went, kids walking through. So look, I just learned this from my daughter. So apparently in Alaska, there's this stuff called schwack, which is apparently walking through brush that you cannot see your hand in front of your face.
Okay.
And you would have to walk through schwack for like a mile at a time. And she said her and her group had to walk up this hill, like a mountain in schwack, couldn't see where they're going. They were in this stuff for hours. But apparently, when you're walking through schwack, because of the bears in Alaska, you have to make a lot of noise. They actually tell you got to stay almost like your hand on the person in front of you to make sure you're tight as a group. And then to make as much noise as possible, you're trying to scare bears. Because what had happened the year before is a group of kids were walking through schwack. They weren't doing their bear prep. They got spread out. A bear got in the middle of them and mauled them all.
Ow.
They all lived through it, but they were all horribly mauled by this black bear on their Knowles trip. So this shit happens.
Yeah, I don't know. If I were hunting in Alaska or living in Alaska, I might think that, I don't know, maybe it'd be a toss up whether the greater threat was a bear or a zombie in Alaska. I think there's a lot of zombies in Alaska too. But I had two buddies who were went on a week-long kind of multi-place fishing trip out in Idaho and Yellowstone and stuff, and they were packing heat, both bear spray and handguns. So this is going to surprise you for my training segment. Starting to do some gun cleaning, Chris. I think it's time.
Good on you.
Yep. I think it's time. I was motivated by shooting the 6.5 Grendel this week and seeing the cases because I'm running a suppressor. The cases were just covered in soot when they were coming out, and so I thought, you know what? I've been creating this situation for all my firearms that I use the most, and it's probably time to pull the swabs out, get the cleaning fluid in, and start my once every 5 years maintenance of my primary competition firearms.
I agree with you. And I actually, not too long ago, bought a little cleaning station. I'm shooting with a friend of mine, an Army guy, and he cleaned his rifles at the range before he put them back in the truck.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
And I'm like, I'm not going to do that either. But I have to admit, I went and I bought this little cleaning station. It's got these little, they can put the barrel in it.
Works
and
great.
Get it now. And I haven't used it yet. It's sitting in the basement, unused, and now just simply you saying this, I'm like, wow, it's raining. Maybe I'll go to the range with my daughter, come back, and I'll sit in front of TV. I'll watch football.
Put her to work. Try and teach an example that this is what someone who owns firearms always should do, is take care of them once they're done with the range, just like Dad does.
Yeah, and I gotta get to, now I'm just thinking, as I'm watching football today, I can go down to my man cave and just have football on in the background and just.
Yep.
Now you're guilting me. Now I feel like a horrible person for not doing it. Kind of like abusing your children or something. This is terrible. I mean, got all my guns dirty in my safe. I'm sure the horror of the listeners knowing how we treat our firearms.
You need to teach the example to the next generation, Chris. Just show them how responsible we are. All right, well, that's going to do it for this week's episode. As always, please be sure to share this podcast with your friends and leave a review on your favorite podcast app. Also, make sure to visit GearScout on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and the web for lots more info, video, and pics. I would 100% recommend that the listeners go to the GearScout YouTube channel. We just loaded some new videos on there. Obviously, one is the XFIVE Legion. And this week we'll be loading on a new one where I do a down low episode give you the down low on the B&T APC 9K. This is the new submachine gun that the Army bought. And yes, I did have a happy switch on that thing, and it made me happy. So see how happy I am this week on the GearScout YouTube channel. Until next time, shoot straight, be safe, and look cool doing it.